What we have to make clear to all and sundry is that a giant has risen, and this giant is going to confront all and sundry who seek and want to stand in its way.
Cosatu's challenge to democratize the workplace has its roots in a long history of worker struggles. From the union movement's early beginnings of fighting for the right to exist, Cosatu is now actively engaged in a process of empowering workers to restructure their industries. The launch of Cosatu was more than a victorious statement of worker unity. It gave workers increased power to fight against the apartheid state. Workers recognized that without a democratic system of government, economic liberation would be impossible. From the mid-80s onwards, Cosatu led a number of decisive worker actions. The National Party government used successive states of emergencies as an excuse to clamp down on the democratic rights of the trade union movement. 1987, and railway workers challenged the state around the right of public sector workers to organize, winning a historic victory. This and other challenges led to intensive attacks on Cosatu, resulting in a police siege of Cosatu House.
They put up a showdown with us, and we are prepared. We haven't got guns, we haven't got all the powerful artillery they've got, but our spirit will live on. We'll show them.
The strength of workers did not lie in the structure of the building, but in the spirit of the people. August 1987, and 340,000 miners downed tools. Employers have only one objective, and that is to crush the National Union of Mine Workers. The state, pushed by big business, introduced the Labour Relations Act, another attack on the rights of workers.
Firstly, it was quite clear that the workers here are determined to take action of some nature to protest against this bill.
Cosatu and the broader community were united in resisting the severe repression of an undemocratic government, as was illustrated in several strikes, stayaways and protests, supported by millions of people. Mass resistance to apartheid and the subsequent economic crisis eventually forced the government to bow to the demands of the people. The release of political leaders marked a new era in South African history.
Once the ANC is in power, we will be able to join the ANC where we agree, and where we do not agree, we will make it very clear to the ANC as a government that we do not agree, and we are going to put pressure on an ANC government to ensure that the rights of workers remain prominent and are treated with the respect that they deserve, and that workers must be regarded as being the most important citizens in the country.
Congress of South African Trade Unions has come a long way since its formation in 1985. No longer only fighting for the right to exist, Cosatu is actively involved in restructuring the industries in South Africa. Recently, the employers, seeing the crisis in the economy, have begun making changes in the industries. Unfortunately, they have done so without consultation with workers. Years of apartheid mismanagement has left an economy with nil growth and 46% of our adult population without jobs. We have only one alternative if we are to expand our economy, and that is to restructure the industries. Centralized bargaining is seen as a tool for restructuring industries.
Centralized bargaining is an important component of restructuring industry. We are saying the trade union movement must have a central role in restructuring industry. Workers must feel they are part of an economy, they are benefiting from the economy, and therefore they will be more committed to increasing productivity, ensuring that the economic growth is placing us on the standards of the international community.
Centralized bargaining is a forum where employers and workers of an industry can come together to negotiate on a national level. However, the idea of centralized bargaining is not without controversy.
Some employers may argue that centralized bargaining is rigid, there is no flexibility, and that it is removed from the workplace. In other words, it is removed from the economic unit of production. It does not take into account the differences and the exigencies that exist at the workplace. It is not close to the markets, the products, and the technology, and the circumstances that affect a particular plant or a particular factory.
This argument that's always given that centralized bargaining doesn't allow for the differentials which exist between companies is absolute nonsense. What we need to do, instead of trying to attack centralized bargaining, is to look at creative solutions that enables one to maintain standards and at the same time enables one to deal with the peculiarities.
Workers are an integral part to the solution of our economic problems. The participatory research project is a vibrant example of how workers are actively involved in research and policy making. Apartheid has suppressed the human potential. The PRP is part of a larger drive to unleash this potential in millions of workers so that they may be empowered to contribute to restructuring industries. Rahmat Omar, the PRP coordinator, tells us more.
It's really been one of the most exciting things I've worked on in Cosatu since I started here. And it's really exciting because it's got a number of different elements. So one is that it combines some education work with some policy development and some research work. The second thing is that it's got as you saw with the group here, enormous amount of worker participation in a very direct way.
The whole question of employers having to make decisions on their own, like in the past, I think has come to its end.
For us, it's in fact made us think differently from working in our own cocoons.
The research project has helped us in terms of the central bargaining because we could be able to sort of analyze the skills that workers had in relation to the wages that they were paid.
One of PRP's objectives is to empower women to become active players in restructuring their industries. Trade unionist Susan Shabangu is a vibrant example of a woman who makes a difference.
Women are part of the society. And like any other person, they should be given an opportunity. And they should be treated like any other person. And they should be judged in terms of their capabilities. And the employers are there to improve their skills. And we've seen in the whole of South Africa, we have very less women who are sort of occupying key positions in companies. Men have been given that opportunity.
The PRP has produced a comprehensive report which makes policy recommendations for industrial restructuring. But what are we talking about when we say that industries need to be restructured. In this program, we will explore three main industries: clothing and textile, mining, and metal. So, let's go to clothing and see what Cosatu has done about their problems.
The first thing the union did was we convened a series of meetings of our shop stewards, where we started to ask them questions about production in their factories, where we started to get them to debate why are their factories going on short time, why are so many workers retrenched, why are some of the factories around them closing down. And that was the start of the debate on economic policy and on restructuring. Then next, we had a number of worker leaders elected in the different regions, and we brought them together to an economics conference that our union called. We called it an industry summit. And there we had something like 100 shop stewards, and we invited all the key employers. We invited someone from the clothing industry, from the textile industry, from the farms, and from the leather industry. And we asked them this question: what, in your view, is wrong with the industry, and what should be done to correct those problems?
What are these problems? Firstly, factories made high profits by paying low wages. Secondly, government reduced competition for factory owners by placing high taxes on all goods coming in from overseas.
South African employers could now make clothing and textiles in very large quantities, paying very low wages, being highly protected from imports. We couldn't buy things from elsewhere really, given this arrangement. And they then set up factories that were not very efficient. In other words, factories that were not able to produce good quality goods very quickly at good prices. And of course, who pays for it at the end of the day? It is we as South African workers who go to the clothing shop at the end of the day who pay the price of this policy.
Through a process of research, consultation, and participation, Cosatu has developed a long-term program for restructuring this industry.
It is an interesting plan. It's a plan that says, number one, we must put large sums of money from government and from employers into the training of black textile and clothing workers, so that they have the skills that can make them very efficient, very productive, able to produce what is required. Secondly, we said, in a textile factory where they weave and they spin, the technology, the machines are very, very important. If you have an old machine, you have lots of workers working that old machine, operating that machine. But the problem is, the quality of the fabric is poor, very little fabric is produced every hour or every minute, and the cost of production is very high.
So introducing new machines will create a more productive industry in the long run. Adding value to raw materials is another way of expanding industry.
We must have a program of beneficiation. Now, what does beneficiation mean? It's essentially the idea that if we have raw materials in South Africa, then we must find a way to process it in South Africa. Now, take wool. South Africa is a very big producer of wool. We, of the top 4 or 5 countries in the world in exporting wool to other countries. So we grow the wool in the Eastern Cape, in the Karoo, in bits of Natal. Then we take the wool, we wash it, and then we send it off to Italy. In Italy, they spin the wool and they create jobs. They weave the wool and they create jobs. They fish the wool and yet again they create jobs. And then they take that finished fabric to a clothing factory and they create further jobs for clothing machinists. And then the beautiful jacket is put into the shop in Italy.
Cosatu's initiatives to involve business in restructuring has borne real fruit. Agreement on several basic issues, including boosting jobs, has been reached. Like with other industries, centralized bargaining is seen as a tool through which Cosatu hopes to achieve the goal of economic growth. But growth also lies in empowering workers. In the mining industry, like elsewhere, democratizing the workplace is at the heart of development. Worldwide changes in the gold mining industry make restructuring essential.
Gone are the days when gold used to be $800 an ounce. So therefore, there is a structural change where investors are no longer buying gold as they used to buy before. Gold is no longer seen as a store of value. It is seen as a commodity. Now, in the light of that structural change, there is also a need for this economy to diversify so that we can look at other products which are non-mining products, so that we can add value, so that we can be creative, we can be innovative. In other words, we can beneficiate, so that then we are able to compete with the Pacific Rim, so that we can work better and smarter and use our wits rather than working harder.
And mine workers certainly work hard. It is clear that the gold mining industry is not going to recover from the slump in the price of gold on the world market. In the future, the countries in the world which have the ability to produce cheap and quality goods will be the countries with the strongest economies. But in the meantime, thousands of workers are being laid off in the mining industry, and whole towns that have been built up around the mining industry are dying.
In many parts of the world where you have developed economies and successful economies, the most important thing they treasure is labor, is workers. In fact, in Japan, the maxim, the dictum that governs the society is workers first, customers second, and shareholders third. In South Africa, you have the other way around. You have shareholders first, that means profits first. Then they have the concern for the customer, and lastly, they're concerned about their labor.
I'm one of 1,000 workers who are dismissed throughout the country. It took me, in fact, a day to tell them that I'm dismissed. Physically, that harmed me, and that disturbed even my mental attitudes and all that, because this has never happened to me. I've used to work for the mines. This was my 15th year. I was never even dismissed in that way. Even in that mine, I had a clear record. What is caused by the retrenchment is that poverty is not only caused to that individual who is retrenched. The rest of the family suffers. So I don't know where to go from here.
The National Mine Workers has developed assistance programs for retrenched workers. This program includes retraining for workers so that they may enter cooperative ventures or find employment elsewhere. For every job lost in the mining industry, 2 others in another industry are lost. Skills training programs during employment could address this problem. Workers would be accredited with the courses they have done, recognized by employers and a national training board. Skills can therefore be transferred to any factory or industry.
So it's only the Indian that has been able to map out a framework which we believe can get our industry on the road to growth and development, and that begins to address the problems that we experience in our industry, be they problems of training, be they problems of productivity, be they problems of industrial restructuring. We're the ones that have put those proposals forward, but we're unable to get employers to agree on a common vision.
While the National Union of Mine Workers is trying to get workers, employers, and government together in centralized bargaining forums, the metal industry too is facing up to the challenge of transformation.
In the metal industry, which is by far the biggest manufacturing sector, we've asked ourselves a question: how can we modernize this industry without throwing workers out of jobs?
It is necessary for us to restructure our companies to be more efficient so that they can make new, better, cheaper products. In this way, our companies will be able to compete on the international market. Question is, how do we make these companies more efficient and create more jobs?
So what we've proposed in the metal industry is a modernization program which we said must be done over 3 years. Got to do it quickly. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to look at the human resource development. You've got to bring in training schemes which can change the skills of the whole workforce. Now that's very difficult Because Bantu education has been so bad that most people don't have enough literacy and numeracy to enable them to do technical education.
The present complicated grading system needs to be simplified to 5 grades only, which would give the worker a clear career path and motivate people to get skills. Human resource development includes literacy and grading systems.
Not like it is today, where you start as a machine operator at the age of 15 and you die as a machine operator at the age of 60. Now that's not a career path.
Management also needs to be skilled.
Most people in management think that their job is to dismiss workers or to discipline workers. If you go to other highly industrialized countries, that's actually not the job. Their job is lead and to guide.
Investment in research is vital.
If you look at the amount of money that's spent on research and development here, it's much lower than almost any other industrialized country in the world, or even the industrializing countries.
Investment in machines and technology is important if we want to modernize our industry.
If we can restructure our industries in the way that we've suggested, we can achieve a high-wage, high-employment industry, because our industries will expand and we'll create more jobs. We'll be able to pay higher wages because I'll be more productive. Cosatu has aimed mainly at job security and job creation. And that's why we say we must grow through redistribution. If you give people electricity, you give people houses and telephones and water and roads and so on, then you create a stimulation in the economy, and you will stimulate manufacturing industry in that way as well, and commerce and other businesses, and you'll put wages into the industry, people will buy things, and that way the whole economy is stimulated.
So, the redistribution of wealth is not the tokolosh it's made out to be. But what about employers? Are they adapting to the times and facing the challenge of transformation?
The purpose of managing is to provide economic efficiency, sustainable growth, is to create wealth which can be distributed fairly and equitably. Our management style should be an inclusive style of management. It should be a style of management that elicits the views of all our workers from the lower echelons at the shop floor to the top at the boardroom. We must feel our style should enable us to elicit not only the views of our workers, but to unleash and to liberate their energy and their creativeness, and to liberate their capacity to think and to contribute.
Democratizing the workplace is a challenge for the future.
The workers must be involved towards to build this economy of our country.
Gore ga re kgone le boiphemelo fela ga o le motho o montsho o re wa ikarabella o pause wa dismissiwa ene bona go gore ba tsa gore ge rona re bua ba tsa gore against le bona re lwa le bona ba terele ka go dira future ya rona.
Many employers have introduced cosmetic changes in the industries under the guise of worker participation. But for democracy in the workplace to have meaning, workers and trade unions must have a significant say on fundamental issues, including investment, profit distribution, working conditions, as well as decisions on technology. How to achieve real democracy in our industries? That is the current debate.